I was born in Dallas, Texas, and my father sold pharmaceuticals to doctors, traveling salesman, and my mother basically was one of the first 5 women that started Mary Kay Cosmetics. Yeah, I think I started dancing when I was about 12 or 13, and then, I was with a group, and then that group moves up to more of the professional, and I really had this dream of moving to New York City and dancing on stage. I thought, I want to be in the chorus line. And then my parents decided to move from Los Angeles, which is where some of the great dance studios were. And we moved to, hello. What a great sound. We moved to La Jolla, which is in San Diego, and there was no good dance. So then I just started going to the disco. What was waiting for me in Europe was, I don't ever want to go back to America. And I still feel that today, every time I'm over here. I just connected more with the lifestyle and the people, and was always a Francophile, and I wanted to stay in Paris. And the only way I could stay, because I ran out of money, was model. And I got signed with Perry Planning and got to see so much of the world on jobs. Because I'm so short, I could only do certain editorial, so it was mostly lingerie and bathing suits. I couldn't do the catwalk, right? So you got to go to the Mauritius and Munich and Tanzania to shoot these amazing photo sessions, and you would only work from like 7 to 9 in the morning because it was always too hot after that in some of these places in Africa. But really got to travel and see culture, at 17. A lot of times you had to go into the room, so the photographer was there and the editor of the magazine. And being in France, topless is the norm. So I had no idea. Nobody prepared me. And I came in, and it was a very, very famous photographer. Don't need to name his name, but anyway.
Just died.
Came in, and he goes, take off your top. And I'm like, okay, take the top off, take the bra off. Take the bra off, and he goes, her tits are too small, need the next one. And at 17, I just walked around like this for 30 years, just geez. Completely. And yeah, I see why with social media that is basically taken over that, where everybody's a judge and there's so much bullying and the critique is so heavy, right? You're never going to be perfect. There's always going to be something wrong. But that was 1983. So it hasn't changed much, is my point.
Right. There were a few frustrating years of auditions not really working out, right? Including for some movies that people know, right?
Yeah.
You've said pretty much the John Hughes repertoire.
Every single John Hughes movie that I never got a part in, that one, yeah. I would get called back 3 to 5 times. And, you go from casting director's assistant to the casting director to the producer to the director. And you think, I'm going to get something, right? I'll get one. Never got any of them. Molly Ringwald got every single, and I said, okay, it was 2 years of this. Getting your hopes up, and then being disappointed. And then I was cleaning houses to make money. And I was like, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm out of LA. I'm going to move to Hawaii, and I'm going to work on a boat. And I did that. I moved to Hawaii, and the minute I landed, I got a call from Eileen Farrell saying, you got the part on Santa Barbara. So I had to fly back, and then that was 4 years. That was 2 years that turned into 4-year contracts.
So let's just, for anyone who doesn't know, this was a soap opera ran on NBC. You were playing. This is a rich daddy's girl, Kelly Capwell, whose love interests include, as noted in another article, quote, a serial killer, her sister's ex-lover, and his identical twin brother, her sister's ex-husband, and her mother's lover. Close quote. We could keep going. 538 episodes. And, it's interesting because a lot of our best actors and actresses started or were early on involved with soaps. They don't necessarily ever want to go back to them, but I know there's some probably learning value in it?
Really, the worst part about it was we shot in NBC studios on a stage, and you never saw daylight for 16 hours of the day because there were no windows. That was the hardest. Of course, I hated it then, but I look back and I go, that was my training. We worked with 3 cameras at all times, so you had to have really quick periphery to know when that red light came on. That's when you turned this way to speak to the actor, and then middle light would come on, and you'd. And we had to memorize anywhere from 10 to 20 pages of dialogue a day. And sometimes we would get the last-minute rewrites in the makeup chair at 5:30 in the morning. So you had to memorize new paragraphs. There were deletions. It was like going into the army of television.
Yeah. In the midst of this 4-year period there, you hear about, at some point, they're going to make, Rob Reiner's going to direct a film version of William Goldman's fairy tale, The Princess Bride. You had only appeared in one film before. It was not one that you or many people choose to remember that much. They had apparently seen a lot of other people by the time you came to their attention. What do you remember about how that casting process went down that ends up with you playing, as people will get to see again soon here, I think, Buttercup, this young lady who is pursued by a farmhand in this film? How did it go down?
I truly think Rob Reiner, the director, was so exhausted because he had auditioned 250 actors. And I think by the time I walked in, he was just like, just give it to her. Let's just shoot this movie. I think I got it. My mother married a British man when I was about 9, 11. And he made sure that I perfected my British accent. If he was going to be under that roof, right? And turned me on to Monty Python and the Holy Grail and blah, blah. And so I think I got it because I could do the British accent. And that was a dream come true, that movie. Because the first movie I did just prior to that, this is good on the resume, I played a 16-year-old heroin addict hooker. Runaway. Good. Go strong.
Quite a different part. And in this case, I'll just say that William Goldman, when I don't know if they had formally cast you or if this was part of that process, but I guess that you guys go over to introduce yourself to William Goldman as well, and apparently his reaction when he saw you was, well, that's what I wrote. Like, that was...
I've never heard that.
No,
That's so sweet.
it was cool. Okay, so you're 21 when that movie's released. Contrary to popular memory, I think it was not a big blockbuster. It took till it was on VHS for people to really catch up with it properly. But for you, I mean, still, suddenly you're on a lot more people's radar than before. And yet, it was not really possible for you to capitalize on that because Santa Barbara, you were still stuck working on Santa Barbara, right? In fact, did they add on the time they'd let you out to go do that movie? Now you got to be there that much longer on Santa Barbara.
Well, think about this math. I was on the show, contracted to do 2 years, and I got Princess Bride about 1.5 years in, and I was going to be gone for 4 months shooting in England. And they said, okay, we've calculated that basically for every week that you're gone, we're tacking on 2 months. Oh. So it ended up being another 2 years because I was gone. So they killed my character in the show. She dies mysteriously. And then when I came back from Princess Bride, suddenly she was alive. They just found her alive.
Once your time, it sounds like a prison sentence. Once your sentence on Santa Barbara was over, there were a number of projects that you have said you passed on because you were at that same time starting your family, and not you certainly don't say it in a way like, oh, I wish I'd done these instead of started my family, but just to note, and correct me just for the record if any of these are incorrect: Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Jurassic Park, The Firm, Batman Forever, English Patient. Does those sound right?
English Patient I didn't get.
Okay.
Really, because I found out I was pregnant with my second child, and I really wanted that one. So that was just a biological thing.
Fair enough.
But yeah, all those.
Was there also something with Born on the 4th of July, Oliver Stone?
Yep, that was a nightmare meeting. There's been a couple of those.
Just weird people.
Just Ridley Scott, these great filmmakers. They don't like women. They just they just don't. Yeah.
You felt like it was just contentious or combative or something?
I have a very funny story about Oliver Stone. So he flies me to meet Tom Cruise, who is shooting Rain Man in Las Vegas. You're going to come to set. He used to talk to me like that. He goes, "You're going to come to set, and we're gonna have a little chit chat about whether you're right for this part." And I'm like, "Okay." We land. I land. And I get ushered to a helicopter, and he's in the helicopter. And we are flying to the empty, open desert where they're shooting a scene. And you've got the things on, and you can't hear, and the thing's going. And I'm trying to make small talk with him, and I said something about, what was your position? Because I knew he was in Vietnam, and I knew he knew how to fly, but I just wanted to know what exactly was his title. And I said, "What was your title?" He goes, "In Vietnam." And he goes, "It's Nam." And from then on, he just had no respect for me because I didn't pronounce Vietnam. So I didn't get the part.
Sounds like it might have been for the best. Now, around that time, you did so you meet someone who you would be personally and professionally involved with for a number of projects, Sean Penn, but in fact, it was not State of Grace. That's the first one that came out, right? This is 1990, but there was an earlier project that got kind of aborted, right? For him, I think at one point they're calling it Loon, but we now know it as Denial. This is 88. Did you, I guess, just talk about how we wind up in State of Grace with you playing the sister of a mobster who falls in love with an undercover cop. So you're kind of caught between Gary Oldman and Sean Penn's character.
Phil Joannou, is that a familiar name? No. You know him, Sandy. He made this great first movie, and the studio said, we're going to put the faith in him, and he's going to make this great. And Ed Harris was in it. So I was with these three bigwigs, real veterans, and I was scared out of my mind playing this part. But Sean and I had met, like you say, years before. He was supposed to do a movie with me that was this crazy, great love story. And the truth is, I guess he was with Madonna at the time, and she read the script and said, I don't know who's playing this role, but whoever plays it, you're going to go off and have an affair with her. I'm sure of it. She was right. He didn't end up doing the movie because she was like, if you go make that movie, I'm out, you know. We broke the box office of Star Wars, I think, our first weekend. I think we topped them, 150 million our first weekend or something.
When you look back at that film, is there a scene that you are proudest of or happiest with personally, just of your own work in that one?
Probably when I'm snorting lines of cocaine and try to jump off the balcony. That was so much fun. Just to, you know, go back to that time period and wear those clothes. Right. That was a hoot.
So as you say, movie opens, grosses hundreds of millions of dollars. You get nominated for Golden Globe and SAG Awards. Everyone, I think, is now aware of and interested in who is this new not new, but actress who's blowing up. And on the other hand, you have said that you were maybe realizing that that you didn't necessarily want to be the America's sweetheart or whatever people were trying to make you at that moment. And in fact, you've said there's a turning point. That's the way you had described it, where right around that time you turned down a cover of Vanity Fair, and you've said like you feel like there was sort of maybe almost repercussions that you're not doing what everybody expects you would want to do in that moment, which is, don't you want to be, the new, I don't know who it would have been at that moment, Julia Roberts, whoever was the reigning queen of Hollywood. So what for you was that moment like, where everybody's sort of wanting to know you, and maybe you're not necessarily wanting to be known?
I don't think it was I know it wasn't. It was not a calculated decision to be exclusive, or it's just who I am. I've always been private. I don't want people that I don't know to think they know me. It's just weird. And when you're in your 20s, and I had my first child at 24, I was a baby. I didn't know who I was. So I didn't want to go do Vanity Fair knowing that all she wanted to know was, what color underwear does Sean Penn wear? It's not worth it. And truthfully, after those kinds of things happened, or like you said, turning big movies down that you knew would be huge, like a Batman, I just was like, I'm not connected to it. It's not grabbing me. And I'm able to pay my bills, so I don't have to do it for money. Now, do we do those movies for money? We have a line in America, we say, oh yeah, I ended up doing Wonder Woman so I could heat the pool. Things like that. So there were those times where you had to go make a big blockbuster just to pay the bills. But for the most part, I've had such a blessed career because I was able to just pick and choose what meant something to me, where I didn't feel like a fraud doing it. And it's been 40 years. So pretty lucky.
You've said that being directed by Sean was a very positive thing. You guys worked well together.
We did. That was the one place we really got along. We should have just been working colleagues, They're great in the editing room together.
And just so we say, 6 years later was The Pledge, where this
That's
happens
right.
again, which
where it
is
happens
with
again,
Jack.
With Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
He's a great director, Sean. Great. Not only a good actor, very good director. Yeah.
And then I'm going to mention some of those great smaller ones and ask you to talk about them. But I think it's another kind of big moment in your life that people may not necessarily know about, because it's not something that necessarily was widely reported on, I don't think. But I mean, you, for most of your career, have not lived in LA, right? That's not a coincidence. There was something, I think, around the time of Crossing Guard, which made you say, I want to get the hell out of here. And I think most people, if it happened to them, and this is on top of the fact that you probably were, dealing with a lot of weird paparazzi and stuff because of your relationship and all of that. But what was the final straw for you in Los Angeles?
It was during a time when the hottest car that was being stolen in Los Angeles was Land Cruisers, Toyota Land Cruisers, in the early 90s. And they were targeting anybody that was driving them, and they would follow you. So I put my two kids, one was not even one, and my daughter was like 2.5. So they're both in their little car seats in the back, and we're going to get bathing suits for the summer. And get to the store, I'm out of the store, gonna drive home, and I pull in the gate of the driveway that's very short. And it had an electric gate, but it could only fit one car. And right as the gate was closed, I get out of the car, I'm gonna get my kids out of the car seat, and I see these two guys come in as the gate is just about to close, and they scoot in the driveway. And I'm held up at gunpoint, and he goes to take the keys to my car. And I said, here's my bag. It's got cash in it. I had just gone to the bank and gotten like $2,000 cash because I was going to go buy an armoire the next day. And they didn't want the money. They wanted the car. And he started to push me out of the way to get in the car and drive away with my kids in the back seat. And this is where you go, okay, there are angels. We have angels. Because my daughter had never been strong enough before to unhook the seatbelt of my son. And she suddenly had that will and that power, and she unsnapped hers, and she unsnapped his, and both my little binkies just jumped in the driver's seat, and I put one on one hip and one on the other, and that car came out of my driveway, and they got away. And the cops, when I called them, they were like, "Is it green? Does it have a yellow button?" I was like, "That's it. Do a U-turn." And the guy runs it into a wall, gets on foot, SWAT teams above, and they have heat detectors, and he's hiding in a dumpster. And my car is in a brick wall. And it was the most traumatizing court day. I couldn't even talk. And he was going to juvenile hall. He was a minor. And I just said, I'm a basket case. I was traumatized. And I just said, I want to get out of this city. It's already a nightmare with the paparazzi popping out of your bushes every time you come and go. And they were everywhere. And we moved up to Northern California in this little town with 1,000 people for 16 years and raised the kids. And it was the best thing we ever did.
Wow. In 2019, you were asked, what are the projects you're truly proud of? And you said 3. Chronologically, the first was 3 years after Forrest Gump and 10 years after Princess Bride. And that was, so chronologically, the first is She's So Lovely, written by John Cassavetes, who had died, directed by his son Nick. You're playing a woman at 2 very different points in her life. Married, she's with one guy and is a certain way, and then years later we see her in a very different way. SAG nomination. What though for you makes that the first time you apparently were really truly proud of your film work?
I think because I was. That's true. Because it was the first time I really got to act in a film where I wasn't typecast. And it's what you were talking about before. You do a movie, you're performing in this, and they want to keep casting you as that same person every movie after every movie. And you want to break the cycle and go, I can actually do something else. I could be funnier. I can be a homeless person. They wanted me to play always the very pained, tortured woman.
When did that start?
From the beginning.
Really?
That was, yeah. It's like, wow, she's so unhappy and does it so well. And I never got cast or even asked to audition for anything other than that. Mm-hmm. So She's So Lovely was a break out of it. And what was funny is, Sean's in it with me, and I was trying to figure out who I was going to play. And I was over at his mother's house. Loved her, but boy, was she a character. And she would talk like that to me. Like you would say, Eileen, where'd you get that beautiful painting? Didn't you buy that in like 1970? No, I didn't buy it in 79. It was 1982. And she would talk to me like that all the time. And so that's who that character was. I don't know if Sean knows that. But
So that's number 1 of the 3. Number 2, first, just chronologically, I'll just mention there were a couple of big studio movies in between with Message in a Bottle, with Unbreakable, but not necessarily, it doesn't feel like that's the kind of movie where you're most at home. However, White Oleander, 2002, this is the second one that you mentioned, a woman with a troubled past who tries to do the right thing, takes in a child whose mother's off to jail and blows up in her face. Talk about why that's number 2 of the 3.
I mean, there was nothing more exciting than to be able to play a Bible-beating Texan ex-junkie foster mother who literally is only taking children in for the money. And you end up finding out that she's been secretly drinking a bottle of vodka every day, and then she just loses it and almost kills her foster child. Go strong. Just, feel-good movie of the year.
Right. So another one which I would put up there with these, this isn't one of your 3, but because it's only 10 minutes of screen time in a movie with, I think, well, obviously, with 9 different chapters, is 9 Lives, Rodrigo Garcia. You're playing this woman who, in a supermarket, runs into a past lover, and it rekindles feelings, and it's, it was an interesting movie, a different kind of movie, but 10 minutes, I think, of not even a cut right?
You know who directed it?
Yeah, Rodrigo, right? Garcia?
Gabriel Garcia Marquez's son.
Yeah.
I mean, you grow up with that father, you're a storyteller.
Yeah.
And he directed, and it was 9 chapters, 9 different women's stories, and some of them connected, some didn't. And it was one shot, and it was a steady cam operator going backwards the whole time through a supermarket, and we're following him. I think we did about 8,000 takes, because you only got one take, right? And it's beautifully done. It's beautifully written. It's so moving. All the chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one, that's a really good one.
2005's Empire Falls, limited series HBO, SAG nomination. And then number 3 of 3 of the ones you mentioned, The Private Lives of Pippa Lee. A woman, you're Pippa, a woman married to a much older man who, actually Alan Arkin, who just died.
Alan.
Yeah.
Oh. The best.
So she then, at a certain point, begins to contemplate her life's decisions, I think you could say.
Runs off with Keanu Reeves.
Yes.
Yes.
So just again, because it's one of the 3, what makes it to you one of the really special ones?
It's such a quirky story, and Rebecca Miller's mind she's a genius in again, look at her father, Arthur Miller. She's just got a very special style, and beautifully eccentric is what she is, and I feel like that's what Pippa Lee. Nobody's seen this film. We don't need to talk about it. Anyway, love the film.
Well, go seek it out.
Love that director. She's great. She directed her husband, Daniel Day-Lewis, in
Jack and
Prank. Worth seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's.
We're wrapping this up.
We're getting there.
People are falling asleep.
No. People. Okay. To connect this to House of Cards, there's a few big projects there. Robert Redford with The Conspirator, Moneyball opposite Brad Pitt, and then Girl with the Dragon Tattoo for Fincher. He says himself, not everyone's cup of tea. He asks a lot of actors, dozens of takes sometimes, all of that. But you and he, I think, really something clicked, and then he came back to you 2 years later. So 2 or 3 years later. Can you explain how House of Cards was presented to you as a possibility, and did it require some salesmanship?
So because I was on a soap opera years before, I had experienced that prison where you're contracted, you're exclusive, you can't go do anything else, right? And I was like, David, I don't want to do TV series again. I really don't. And he said, this is going to be different. We are going to launch this new medium of watching that is going to be the future, and it's called streaming. And I was like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And he said, it's basically giving the viewer ownership and access to something that they own. You're buying a subscription to whatever network. Every month you're paying that on your credit card. You should be able to have that content whenever and however much you want. And what they failed to do was redesign the contracts for royalties, which is why we're on strike back home. But I just said, what can you promise me? Because how long do you think this show will go? And I don't want to just be a character where I'm arm candy on Francis Underwood. And he said, oh, no. This character is going to go places, and she is going to do really dark things. And we are going to create it together as we make it. Because we never knew from season 1 to season 2 if we were going to get picked up for a season 2. So we had 2 scripts going at the same time, always. This could be our end, or this could be chapter 1, right? And so I was like, okay, we don't know if we're getting picked up. Where's she going if she does get picked up? And he said to me, I need her to be, she's a bust like when you walk into a museum. She's quiet, she's stoic, very calculating, very venal, but she is so powerful with just her stare. And you don't need to move your head very much, you just, and I was like, that's all I needed.
Yeah.
She's a bust with really great dresses and Louboutins. Yeah.
And starting with season 2, you were also directing, which is something I know you wanted to do for a long time and have now done as a feature film with Land. But let's just note, season 2, you directed 1, 2 in season 3, 4 in season 4, 2 in season 5, and then the season 6 series finale. Was it what you hoped it would be to be directing? And also, like Land, I know Land was not intended to be this, but when you're also acting in the thing that you're directing, what is that like?
Yeah, I mean, people are like, isn't it difficult? I'm like, no, it just takes more time.
Yeah.
Because when you've been acting this long, it's literally like turning the switch on in the room and the light comes on and then you turn it off. You're not torturing yourself and ripping your eyes out because you have to go cry in a scene. You're like, it's a job. And you flick it on, you flick it off. So that was not the difficulty, is jumping in front of the camera. It was racing the clock because I had to go watch playback. And so I'd do a series of takes instead of, action, cut, action, cut. I'd say, just keep rolling, and I'll do four different takes all in one. And then I'd have to run back to the tent where the video and watch all my takes to see if it was good and grade myself and then go, oh, shit, I didn't get it. I have to go do it again. That was taking time out of my day as a director. And we have so many pages and scenes on a TV series to shoot per day. It's insane how fast you have to move. So that's the tricky part of being in it and directing it. Because bless film's heart, and I want to bring it back, and that's why I love these kind of festivals, because you're celebrating cinema. And I know that people are out there just going, it got killed during COVID. It's just like took it away. And people are like, why am I going to go sit in a theater and pay $50 for 2 seats? I can be at home and watch anything. So it's a complicated answer because it's great on one hand, the streaming, and it sucks also because it hurts film. And I hope there's a resurgence of film. And I think festivals like this are only encouraging of that. So thanks for being cinephiles.
Thank you.
You're really good at this. You should do it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.